All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We're very excited about this event. This is a critical session as part of the Customer Experience Community of Interest under ACT-IAC. Just want to share, just to level set about the COI. First, my name is Lee Becker, and I have the privilege to be the industry chair for this wonderful group. And we have our government chair is Janet Pence. Right now, our industry vice chair is vacant. So also a plug if anyone's interested. You'll be seeing soon. Elections are going to be going out shortly. So please stay tuned to the comms from ACT-IAC. Our government chair is Courtney K. Decker from IRS. And then we have a great team of working groups, and as you can see here. But really, the bottom line is any member from government and across industry that's part of ACT-IAC can join, and I highly recommend that to happen. We host topics like this amazing topic around AI in action on a monthly basis. We have happy hours. This is a critical group. When I spent my time in government, I was very involved with ACT-IAC, and then when I moved to industry, continued to be. I found it to be very beneficial, and I highly recommend others to join as well. And you'll see here, there's a link. We'll put that in the chat as well. So please feel free to share with others about it. And I'm really super excited about these working groups. These are working groups that are focused in on, from our membership has pretty much said, hey, we want working groups to really dive into contact center. How do we do service delivery work within government, and also the workforce optimization efforts that's going on across government. So these are great places to also gather with like-minded people. All right. Couple things for us to be aware of. We have the Contact Center Summit coming on April 8th, so please join us. It's a great event. It's here. It's going to be in Reston, Virginia, at the Carousel Conference Center. Great programming that's been put in place. This is actually the one and only government contact center summit. So we started last year, our first inaugural one, which was a huge success, and just really excited about the slate of speakers and attendees and just the content involved. I think you'll greatly enjoy it. And then we're also very excited about this. This is the first ever state and local event. This is something that our membership has shared. That we want to bring some of the programming to the state and local level. So I know you may say, why not DMV? Why not the DMV first? It's because New York was so excited. They said they wanted to do this first before DMV. So there you go. But DMV will be more than likely next. So this is a really great one to be thinking about if you want to go to New York. And we have the New York State, New York City, also New Jersey, Connecticut, others involved in the area, which is going to be a great event that is going to be taking place at the World Trade Center. Okay, so with that, I'm just delighted to pass on the torch to Janet Taylor. Janet, who is an amazing leader, has been involved in this space for a very long time. She's been in many different companies and organizations that have been supporting government, and now she's at ServiceNow doing great work. I'm excited to pass the torch to Janet. Thank you for your leadership and all the work by the team to bring this amazing panel together. Without further ado, Janet, so over to you.
Hey, thanks, Lee, and welcome everyone. I'll get to panelist introductions here in a little bit, but just to open up this uh, session entitled AI in Action, a little fun fact I dug up that AI officially became an academic field of study in 1956. I did not know that. But I think we can all remember where we were in November of 2022 when AI really became something that we all talked about, not only in our personal lives, but in business. So it moved beyond your intelligent vacuum cleaner, which was the Roomba, into actually doing work in your organization and maybe your personal life. So at that point, we're now at the point where AI in government is moving from pilots to everyday use. And so the question we have before us is how to really make it work responsibly and at scale. And because we're the customer service or customer experience COI, we're really focusing on service and how service teams are being asked to do more with less, whether it's managing the volumes, the journeys, or the rising expectations for a more personalized engagement. And that's where we're starting to see AI play a role, a more practical role in helping to handle some of the more routine questions in self-service, improve triage and support, so that agents and the rest of the service team can focus on the more complex cases. So before we get started, we'll kind of lay the groundwork on what we hope you'll take away from today's discussion. We're focused on AI in action. That means we're not talking about theory or future concepts, but really how your organization might be using AI today and where we can start to enable more intelligent and responsive interactions. And I hope you'll walk away with three things: a better understanding of where AI is already delivering tangible results in some of the organizations that are represented here today across government and industry. Some practical examples of how some of the organizations are leveraging AI to improve service outcomes. And then a more grounded perspective on how you might use this information moving forward. And also another important thing, you'll see some names here, and maybe this is an opportunity to network and reach out, and so you have people you can collaborate with and use as a sounding board. Some of the key themes is we'll be moving from starting the conversation from experience, moving to more responsible adoption, and how you can leverage AI to meet citizen expectations, and then addressing the complexity across multiple journeys and really fractured silos of technology, and hopefully positioning you for what's next. So I'm really happy that to introduce our four panelists here that represent a broad spectrum from government to academia to industry. So starting off with Ryan Palmer, he's the architecture lead at General Services Administration. And I believe one of his key programs is USAI, which hopefully we can touch upon during this discussion. Next is Param Soni, who is the CIO and Chief AI Officer at the Bureau of Economic Analysis at the Department of Commerce. And then we have Patsy Dahlheimer, who's comes from as a contractor supporting Social Security Administration, specializing in user experience. And then representing academia is Dr. Nathan Fuller. We'll call him Nat for this purpose of this discussion, who's a senior fellow and research lead on innovation and artificial intelligence at Noblis. And he's also an adjunct professor at Purdue and North Carolina Central. So to open up the panel discussions, I'd like to open up and ask each of our panelists, to kind of give their perspective on two different things. And I'm going to open it up here with with Nat, because the question is, from an academic perspective, as well as from a researcher, how do you counsel or consult with your customers and your students on how to articulate the value of AI in terms of mission impact and not necessarily just technology?
Hey, great question, Janet. And Janet, thanks again for inviting me here. Super excited about being here with you and the rest of my colleagues here. Yeah, Janet, so I love your stat, the way you just started off by saying, in 1956, AI really became this academic center of focus in terms of the academic side of the house. Everyone probably knows AI really started like in the 1950s, where people were doing a bunch of research. It was all theoretical, a lot of cool movies coming out. Now that AI is sort of like this real tangible acquisition type program of record where money's really being focused on this particular area of focus, the natural question, at least from my perspective, at least from academic perspective, is how do we use AI, right? Like, how do we use it in such a way that, one, it allows us to really be effective and efficient at what we do, while at the same time, we gain much more understanding about just the implementation of AI, right, for future use cases. So from an academic perspective, we have been focusing a lot on how do you use AI? When do you use AI? How do you use AI? A great example is I had one colleague come to me and say, hey, is there a way that we can use AI to help certain individuals who are not coding SMEs, right, who maybe come from the business side of the house, can we use AI to teach them how to code? Exactly. We can certainly do that, right? In such a way that creative thought is still being used to like come up with new innovative ways to build code. But at the same time, you don't have to go back and read 12 or 11 different coding books, right? To really understand how to do coding and how to implement code. So that's a great example. From the government perspective, we're seeing a lot of different use cases on the use of AI. One in particular is how do you use AI to really interpret policy that was written back in the 1970s and new policy that an organization would like to develop. Can AI be used to combine the data of both these policy sets and then do sort of like a correlation type, relationship entity mechanism to, determine if there's correlation between our new policy and our old policy, or is there indirect correlation? So those are kind of like two examples, Janet. But what I would say is that to me, it's use cases, really understanding what it is your organization is trying to do, the mission of what your organization is trying to achieve, and then figure out which AI concept can be implemented in such a way to make you much more effective and efficient.
Perfect. All right. So, Ron, I'm going to ask you kind of the same question. You're come from GSA as an AI architect, but also responsible for USAI, which for those you might who are in the room, if you could give a quick description of maybe what that is in terms of.
Sure. So, kind of answering, getting into this question as well. So USAI, we created as a kind of a shared trial service for government agencies, right? We provide access to multiple models, right? So we're trying to pull in as many models as we can from all the leading American AI vendors and make them available in one place with an API interface, a chatbot interface, so that agencies can explore these different models, understand their different strengths. We also do routine evaluations of all the models. So, agency has governance needs, right? So like, is there a model card? What is this thing performing at? Are there, evaluations? So we streamline and do a lot of that, like things that agencies should be doing, and we do that in one place centrally and then share that out. So that lets agencies, sign a trial agreement with us, and they can get into the service and actually explore the different models that can inform procurement decisions later on down the road. They can use it, for, near production use cases as well. The goal of that is really to help agencies get access to the technology, which is, I think, where this question is going is, hey, okay, we bought like, how do we, I use analogies all the time, right? I can buy a treadmill, using it is actually what's going to make me healthier, not having it sit in the corner. So we're trying to get that, that equipment to agencies and the technology accessible to agencies very quickly with USAI, and then work with those agencies to build those use cases. Within GSA, I think a lot of the initial use we're seeing is, helping reduce frictions. That might be responding to customer inquiries quickly. That might be better understanding the data we already have. Government, turns out, has a lot of digital paper that LLMs are really good with. But I think there's also an inflection point where we're seeing, as people are maturing in their use, right? It goes from like, I'm better responding to these inquiries to like shifting to like how can I actually improve this process? That might be writing FAQs, but it also could be like, maybe if we do this, we could actually eliminate these tickets coming in or these questions coming in because we have better documentation, because we provide the service slightly differently. And I think that's where making data available and helping kind of the frontline staff using kind of AI tooling to start making data-driven decisions at a lower level, where before you might have had reporting on, hey, what vendors do we have relationships with? You can start asking different questions of like, where should we focus our attention with these? So it's less about the report and more in the hands of like the operational boots on the ground. And I think AI is a really enabling tool for that.
Cool. So let's get down to some agencies. So Param, what was the problem or opportunity that first pushed your agency to explore AI beyond, say, the pilot phase?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm Param Soni with the Bureau of Economic Analysis. people who don't know me don't know what BEA does. We produce the GDP for the US government, personal income, and all the economic statistics, which keeps the economy going. We are a small, nimble agency, but I must say we have a lot of data. So as you know, data is the key in AI. So that's one of the things which we focus on. Your question was, Janet, on what is the most. So we started a project last year of converting our code. Most of our code is in statistical application like SAS. We use FAME, some we use R, to move to Python. Most of our the workforce are economists who write software to analyze the data. Basically, we collect the data, we process the data, we run our statistical models, then we disseminate the data to the public. So the key project was code conversion. So we started a pilot using Microsoft Copilot to see if we could use this AI tool for the work we have planned to do. So we set up an innovation lab. We provided, this is before, all of these got FedRAMP. So we had an internal enclave where the data was only internal, not going outside. We got our local Copilot. And we ran some tests, user tests for 3-month period. We did a pilot on seeing how this will be effective, because that was a key project we're doing. And the results were great. People did all kind of things, because we have a lot of legacy software. Some people were using that to decode the software. Some people just doing direct conversion from old to the new one. Some people trying to understand the code and they don't know how to do in Python. So the success rate was very high. It was more than 50% people were saying we'll get cost savings. And so we said, okay, this seems like a good project. And then we kind of rolled it out. Now we have rolled out to 100 people. But we have an intake form where they provide a need, what they use the code for, because of course we pay for all the tokens. And then it is moving forward. We had a 3-year plan. Now that has shrunk to 2 years because of the work which can be done. I can go into more detail, but that's a very high level. That's the project.
Great. I see data is like a common theme here. So moving on to Patsy, who comes to us from the contractor space and is a UX specialist. What problem or opportunity did you see in your environment that the agencies that you work for to explore AI beyond just a pilot? Maybe you can talk about from a UX perspective.
Yeah, so I'm a little less technical than some of my other panelists. So I bring perspective from customer experience, service delivery, and really connecting with those who use our service and depend on our services. So I've been supporting SSA's user experience team for about 11 years now. And it's a really exciting time. I feel like we went through this maybe 10 years ago when agile software development was really big, and how do we implement that on an enterprise scale in government. And now AI, it feels like a very similar place that we're in. I think for us supporting SSA, we were really focused on the mission of timely and accurate service. So we have a lot of millions of Americans applying for benefits, lots of applications, lots of backlogs, and we really had an opportunity to use AI to help us reduce those processing times for claims that we're evaluating, getting folks their decisions more quickly, and then also more accurately. So AI really plays into both of those goals. Sometimes if we're moving quickly, we sacrifice accuracy, but AI can help us with both of those things. And I can talk through a use case a little bit later in the presentation.
All right, great. I wanted to move now into some more real world case studies. And I'm not gonna go round robin here, but I'd love it if you guys would raise hands. And if I don't see any hands, I was a 5th grade teacher before I started selling software, so I'll call on you. So agencies are shifting from, experimentation to embedding AI as part of their standard processes. And so now I'd really like to, have a conversation around some real world case studies that you all are having in your organizations that are having impact, particularly when it comes to service delivery, whether, particularly as we, look at service to the citizen and customer experience interactions. And if you can talk through us a specific use case that improved a service speed, accuracy, or resource allocation, I'm going to open it up to whoever raised their hands first, or otherwise I'll call on you. All right, I see. Dr. Fuller, take it away, Nat.
No, this is a great question, Janet. And I raised my hand only because this literally happened like a week ago, right? It is fresh on my mind. So my team, we were out in San Diego. We were speaking. We do a lot of work on the Department of Defense, but we also do a lot of stuff on the federal side too. And we were talking to a particular organization in the DoD, and we were talking about just models in general, right? So Ryan mentioned a lot about model cards and really understanding, the attributes of a model and what a model means. The question that we got from this particular group of individuals is, Nat, what does a good model look like? Right. And they were like, and it was a very broad type, question, but I understood where they were going with it. Their use case is simply they have an array of different models that they're bringing in, running those models across various data sets, some complex, some really not. And a lot of these models are presenting different types of empirical results to them. And what they're asking is, okay, Nat, tell us which one is the right one, right? Very interesting question, very complex question, very difficult question, because from our perspective, which is we have an LLM lab that we've created just to really kind of focus on these type of things, is to answer that question, it's both quantitative and qualitative, right? Quantitative aspects is the model will always render you some type of result, right? Some type of empirical result based on the data. The qualitative aspect comes from the human in the loop or human on the loop, right? Whichever you prefer, where they actually have the quantitative information about a particular use case or a particular mission. And you need both of them to really understand exactly which model is the best. But that has led to like certain tools that we've developed where we can, from a quantitative perspective, put a certain risk type attribute or element on a model based on how the model was trained, how it was baselined, who developed it, what type of data was used to actually build the baseline version of it. So from my perspective, I think as we get more into this, how do we use AI, right? And how do we, really understand how it impacts our organization? That particular question is, which model is the right model for me? That is, to me, in my mind, going to be a very important discussion to really talk about with each organization, because each organization is different in terms of what data they're using and what model they decide to use to tackle a certain mission type question or a problem statement.
Thanks, Nat. Anyone else have a specific AI use case that they want to talk about? Patsy.
Hi, thanks, Janet. Yeah, so actually the proof of concept that I've been working on with some colleagues on my team was actually born out of trying to help them turn around results faster. So as part of our user-centered design practice, we'll bring in members of the general public to our UX labs and do testing, usability testing with them. Let's say we're testing the MySSA login experience. So we'll have them come in, walk through some scenarios. We get a lot of rich qualitative data from that. We get a lot of notes. We might have 10 participants coming in and, many, many notes from those 10 participants. So the goal after that is always to turn around what we find and make improvements so that what we find can be fixed in production. But we were finding that wading through all of the notes, doing the analysis, coming up with the findings reports, was taking a lot of time, and we were wanting to turn that around quicker. So one thing that we investigated was we have an in-house chat bot at SSA that was developed in-house and actually supports attachments. So merging all the notes into one document, attaching it, testing out some prompts. It was able to give us really accurate results analysis, and actually turned a 70% time savings in the tasks that used to be done manually. So that allowed the designers to actually spend more time on the design iterations, on making those improvements, so that the general public could be served quicker through our internal efficiencies. So that is something that it can be even small in your own workflow that you're working in. If you think to yourself, gosh, this is taking me a lot of time, I wish this could be quicker. A lot of times AI can help you with that. And we can talk a little bit more about human verification, because that's a very important piece. But I would encourage anyone to kind of analyze what they're doing day to day and see if you could be assisted with technology.
I love that. Okay, Param, looks like you're raising a finger there. You ready to go?
Yeah, sure. I'm ready to go. As I mentioned, we produce the statistics, and one of the key elements for that is data collection. We have a lot of survey forms. We send it to various entities, and that was a PDF form. So we thought, why don't we use AI to first? We did the two-pronged project. First was we converted the PDF form to web-based form. So there were a lot of elements there. So it was much easier with the chat tool to convert that. But more importantly, we also, many times when we get the data, there is missing data, or some data they have not responded to. So we are using our chat tool to generate estimated values where the data is missing, so that survey is complete. So that has been a big benefit to us, because we get hundreds, maybe thousands of surveys from various entities, and that's allowed us to streamline our data collection piece before we start doing our economic modeling and statistics.
Great, thank you. And Ryan, from your perspective, has there been any specific use case that went really well, that improved, particularly maybe when it comes to customer service or citizen service, that you can talk about, that you're aware of?
Yeah, sure. I think one area that we're seeing, one of the cool things about USAI is we have some insights into how people are using the product, right, across the organization. So it's not, we have usage dashboards with categorization. I think one of those we've certainly seen is, public comment type summarization, right? So, hey, we've got all these public comments. I know I've even, used it personally with different environments, is because you can help surface perhaps nuance you might not capture. You can help surface themes you're getting from the public comment. You can help surface particular recommendations that come across, or even different groups of potential people submitting comments, right? That could be from industry, it could be from providers, it could be from the public at large, and understanding the different concerns from those different stakeholders in a way that, prior to AI pulling that information together and digesting it, was very manual and labor intensive. Now you can do a lot of that with AI. That helps better address public feedback to work that GSA may undertake, and even also agency comments. Like public comment might be just another agency outside of GSA. I think that's really helped inform some of the responses to public comment. We also do a lot of internal government to vendor type work to look and identify where there's opportunities to partner, where we're buying a lot of services with a vendor to better identify that. And a lot of times the data sets that underlie these things aren't clear or aren't as clean as we'd love, but LLMs are a great step in helping clean up and really transfer that data into something that is more usable.
Great. It sounds, data is a common theme, and being able to, seems like from every comment here, being able to parse through the data is really helping you drive and make decisions quicker and more accurately. Would that be safe to say? And before we move on, if anyone has any questions or comments, you can post them in the chat, and we'll either try to get to them during the conversation or we'll have time for Q&A at the end of this. So one of the big things, as AI has come on us like a tsunami, is there an AI initiative that didn't go quite as planned, and what did you learn from it? Anyone want to take that? Don't be shy.
I can kind of try to speak to one real quick.
I would love it.
So, we've got a lot of people who are trying to use AI in coding, right? And there's different levels of maturity. So they might be mature developers who've been doing this for years who are now adding AI to improve their efficiency. But we also have vibe coders, right? And I think conceptually you're like, oh, these people are just trying to code, but you really have to treat these groups are at different stages. They might be trying to accomplish the same things, but they have different backgrounds. They may not, if you've been doing coding for years, you understand what GitHub is or Git is. That's not something everybody understands. You understand what a code scanning pipeline is. So I think one thing is when we have these new people who are experimenting with code, not doing enough to meet them where they are was something where it's like, okay, don't treat them like normal developers. And I think me personally, like sometimes you're like, they'll figure it out. They'll ask the AI to how to do this right. And they don't know what questions to ask. And not that they're doing it wrong, but they'll ask for help. So I think a learning lesson for me is really trying to identify those different groups, understanding you have to meet the users where they are, not to shut them down. I remember personally, one of the first projects I coded, security came to me, knocked on the door, was like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh no, the security people are going to shut me down. But they didn't do that. They said, what are you doing and how can I help you do it more securely? And that was a partnership. And I think that's where we're seeing is like understanding that there's certain users who are kind of pathfinding within an organization. I think we're seeing that in GSA. I'm hearing that from partners as well, like that are going out a little bit before. So getting the right people and working as a true cross-functional team. We've had, okay, let's have someone from our security engineering team join them. Let's have a privacy analyst work with them if there's any sort of privacy impact. Pull in legal if necessary, and keeping these teams small so they can move and kind of blaze the trail for other users in an agency or an organization seems to work really well. I would call it like just-in-time governance and just-in-time process, right? You're building what you need at the time rather than building it up front. And that way you don't kind of make the mistake I think that I was doing at first is like, hey, we can just treat all developers or all coders the same because they're not the same and they're trying to accomplish different things.
Awesome. Anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, hey, Janet, this is Nat. I'll kind of add something here also. What I would say is that just from the experimental work that we've done just with the LLM lab, one of our big models is we want to fail fast, right? Because once we fail fast, then we know exactly what the right direction is, where we need to go. And with one thing that we were prototyping, one of our clients was asking for a specific LLM to actually be used to process some certain policy related information, some data. And so what was really remarkable and really interesting about this is that when we wind up ingesting the information into we were just using like a AWS blob store, right? Which is just a unrelational place to just store multiple documents. And we were able to then train the LLM on this particular data. The results that the LLM produced wasn't really what the client expected because there were a lot of cognitive information and a lot of what I call subject matter SME type knowledge that the client had. And then that led into much more of a deeper discussion about data quality, right? And data governance. So in other words, individuals wanted LLM, they wanted AI, but the AI really revealed something much more deeper, which was, hey, you have a data quality issue. So our actual experiment went from building you an LLM to answer questions to now let's use AI to go through your data and look at null values. Let's look at how do we normalize your data, maybe get it into the third normalization type pattern, right? So it shifted from one particular use case to a data quality use case, which, in essence, not really a failure, but it's more of a, hey, let's apply AI to the correct problem, right? Which is you had a data quality issue and we found that out, building AI systems. And now we're on the right trail, really trying to fix your data problem. So
there's that D word again, data. Param or Patsy, anything you want to add before we move into another little topic here?
I have a quick one. So I talked a little bit about the chatbot that we developed in-house that helped me a lot with the data analysis of testing. But when that chatbot was first released, I think there was a lot of excitement, but also folks didn't quite know how to use it. And some folks were, maybe asking policy questions. I think Nat alluded to this before. There's a lot of policy in government and a lot of folks trying to understand it and apply it in the best way. But this chatbot hadn't been trained on policy. That was kind of coming later. It's actually in the pipeline right now. So I think there was a quick I guess, feedback from that of this is cool, we don't know what to do with it. How can it help us in our work? So in a very, quick future release, what they did was they added a prompt library with templates so that you could actually go and see these are the use cases, that this chatbot can help you with. And here's a ready-made prompt that you can do. You can, compare text, you can summarize things, it can help you draft an email, all of that good stuff. And then also in the ways that people were naturally using that chatbot, it also gave the development team and the feature team ideas for how they could develop other tools for people to use that would be useful. So I think that one, a little bit of lesson learned is, communication up front for this is how this can be used, and here are some examples. And then, turning it around quickly based on the feedback that you get.
Great. Param, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think people have covered. Just briefly, I'll say that, for us, I'm glad to hear Ryan has a lot of leverage being a federal agency. I don't have that much leverage. So everything has to be FedRAMPed and, all the other stuff to meet all those guidance. But we did build a security policy, and we have an intake form. So we have managed the risk based on that. So the intake form provides a use case of what they plan to do, 30-day pilot. We give them a license, and then they can test it. So that's our way of making sure before it becomes a project. Initially it's just a thought that we can validate that before it becomes. So we really don't want to become a project with additional resources. Different perspective, but kind of, touching that top subject.
Great. All right, so we're going to move on to the next section, which everyone loves, which is security, responsible AI, and trustworthiness. So FedRAMP, FISMA, all of the other acronyms that we've come to love being in this federal space. So, AI is like I said, has come on us with a tsunami and raises all kinds of not only security questions, but cultural questions. And so, I'd kind of like to get your perspective on, how you might have addressed privacy concerns as you designed and deployed your AI systems. And anyone want to take that from the jump?
I can kick off.
Sure.
So, as I mentioned briefly, that before we actually got into AI, this again in 2023, I think a little bit before that, 2024, we had an AI governance board. And from the governance board, we identified that we need an AI security policy. We worked with our security, head of security to come up with the policy. So things like, you must not enter confidential BEA data into public AI. This is for internal only. Then also we have, we have something called Title 13, Title 22, which is basically we get IRS data. We get other survey form data. We get business information data that has to be protected, that we cannot put in a model. So we make sure that those people were informed, educated, and then those policies. And anyone who uses it, they have to sign that security policy before they can get access to it. So then they know what. And we have included that as part of our DevSecOps process. Security has been included. So our security officer looks at, for example, we use a Python code. We have something called Sonatype, which makes sure any open code which goes through security vulnerability testing before it can be ingested into our system. So those are the things we have sent from first, have a policy, educate people on the policy and make sure that is implemented. And then I say ongoing is part of our development.
Cool.
can
Anyone else like to chime in?
I can
Grant, I
kind of
think this
take
is right up your alley.
yeah. With what we saw, and one of the goals of USAI is kind of like provide a stable, like a floor level of security and governance, not just GSA's own use, but also for other agencies. So to the extent building, making sure we're doing those evaluations, making sure that we're encrypting data, all those baseline controls, making sure we have strong authentication. Those are kind of the floor. And a lot of advantage of doing that is then you provide the tools to the users, and you can avoid some of the things like desk swiveling, where the person goes from their computer and goes in the chat bot over here because they don't have access to the tools they need at work. So providing them an approved way to use AI is, I think, a big part of this. For AI to be useful, I'll say the data word again, right? Most users are going to have to expose the AI to the same data they would need to make a determination or to be useful. So if it's being used to look at contracts, you have to feed it contracts, right? If it was I don't think, I'm not aware of any like human related use cases that I've been involved in, but like you're going to have to expose it with those data. And I think a big part of this is teaching users and people working with AI to only expose the right amount of data to get the answer. That's good, not only just from a security and privacy standpoint, but throwing excess data in it, A, is going to cost more money, and B, it's going to potentially result in worse outcomes. Another big key here is, I think, continuing, like most agencies, and I think outside of agencies, like zero trust principles are kind of helping implement this stuff in general. When we start passing the identity with what we're doing, right? So if I'm using an AI, it's acting kind of on behalf of Ryan. It doesn't have access to the root of the database, and it would have whatever access Ryan would have to that data and relevant to my request. So that's something I think getting that identity to the actual data is key. You can also then start wrapping policies that are data related. So, hey, if Ryan's coming from a personal device, right, he can't access data that is confidential. He can access the general data, right, public data, but he can't access confidential data. So being able to understand your data and then build the right policies for use and having the tooling in place to do that is, I think, key. And then just ongoing telemetry monitoring, right? If you have 6 different AI services, how are you pulling that data back and just monitoring to make sure what you think is happening is happening. It is key. So that visibility element is, I think, really key to privacy, but also security and governance of AI.
So good kind of best practices on, what you're saying is it doesn't have to be all or nothing, I guess is what you're
apply the right amount of governance based on the use case, right? If you're dealing with a high impact use case in the public, you need legal, privacy, everybody in there. You got to really consider those things. If you're dealing with public data, right? Like I think Param said, like we started out exploring public chatbots that weren't FedRAMP authorized, but we made it very clear, like, hey, don't put sensitive internal data into these things. So applying the right rules, training your users, but also just providing the tooling so users don't have to think that much, right? As far as like, hey, I know if I can put in an email, I can put it into a chatbot is a powerful statement that helps users feel empowered to use the tools in a safe way, right? But getting to that point is important.
Okay, perfect. So one of the things I want to move on to is, AI has provided us with a huge cultural shift as well as, there's some bias, and how do we adopt to both of those? And I'm going to particularly Patsy and Param, because you're more attuned to the user, and maybe Nat, you can weigh in. How do you manage the cultural shift? And from a user perspective, Patsy, I'd like you to kind of take that if you could.
Sure. Thanks, Janet. Yeah. I would say that there's, the whole mixed bag. There's excitement. People are hesitant. people are unsure, maybe a little intimidated. So I think what, Ryan said at the end is true, that we have to understand that people need a little bit more direction on how to use these tools, and understand the language around them, right? We're throwing out things like LLMs and prompts and all of these things that
their
folks
own innovation capabilities.
may not
This is Tales from the Trenches.
may not understand.
I don't know who that was.
I was interested in hearing more. So, the way I look at it is we already have, our work, our day-to-day, we have a workflow. I see AI as augmenting that process. I'm a visual person, so I think of it, in my user-centered design cycle, I have different steps along the way. I think of AI as an overlay, right? So in my research, in my user research, how can we inject AI into what I'm already doing? And that kind of grounds it a little bit. So it's not this scary thing that's replacing what you're doing. It's just helping you do what you're already doing, to be more efficient in what you're doing. I think the other piece of that, is the human verification piece that I alluded to earlier. If you're doing something like data analysis, with AI, a big part of that is being able to verify that what it's giving you is accurate. And so some people are turned off by, well, I just have to go through everything it said and verify its accuracy. How is this saving me time? So it's looking at those processes and saying, okay, well, how about after every usability evaluation, you write down some quick notes that you got? That document at the end can then be compared to what that AI tool has given you. You say, hey, AI chatbot, take your results and then look at these human notes and compare them. Show me the commonalities, show me the differences, see how the AI really performs. And then it's a much quicker process, right? So I think you just have to get creative in understanding where those efficiencies are, understanding the work that you're doing and how it can play a role. And I think that trust comes once you verify that what you're doing, with the AI is giving you results based on the work that you've done yourself, as the designer.
Great. So from a cultural standpoint, Param, is there anything you want to add to that in your organization?
Yeah, I can add some to that. As I mentioned, we have a AI governance board. So one of the things I did was to do it a two-pronged approach. One is at the executive level, make sure we identify the key projects and see how AI can impact those projects. The project I talked about, the survey form, the code conversion, but Python is a big initiative for us. And also we have AI governance board. It's not only the executives or the managers, but also I wanted to identify two people from each organization. We have something called the International Directorate, National Directorate, and Regional Directorate. Two people, SMEs, who are using or plan to use these LLM tools to do the work they are doing. And work could be as easy as organizing public comments or maybe doing a search of collection of documents. So I invite them once a month in the senior staff meeting to present their cases. So it's like a two-pronged approach. For the high level, they get understanding of how it can, as we all know, sometimes, from especially non-technical business folks, they may not fully appreciate the value of this. But when they see the use cases being done in their organization at a lower level, lower from level is somebody who's kind of more task focused, they see the value of it. So bringing those two together, I think had paid a big dividends for us here, Commerce.
Great. Nat, anything you'd like to add to that before we move on to the next section?
Yeah, no, real quick. What I've personally seen both academically and professionally is just a rise in requests for training, particularly with some of the things that we've been doing internally within the LLM lab. we have really been getting in front of a lot of executive leaders, a lot of middle management, and we are really kind of decomposing a lot of the AI, ML jargon that sometimes, kind of gets outrageous with some of these tech magazines and some of these papers that are written. And we just really get down to the nitty gritty. We really talk about what is it that you think AI and ML is really doing, and what is it that you want to do as a mission specialist or mission operation type person. That's led into much more prototyping with our training curriculum, but it's also led into the creation of more digital twin implementations that we've been building, which is trying to replicate your particular use case, your environment, bringing in data, using LLMs to generate some type of result, and then asking you as the mission person, is this right? And if this is not right, then let's find out what right looks like. So to me, it's a journey down the AI, I call it the AI roadmap, where you're really experimenting, but you're training at the same time. And we're really kind of decomposing sort of like the biases and some of the myths behind this whole thing that we call, AI.
Cool. Just real quick, if someone, talk about bias and how human oversight might play a role in your AI workflows. Anybody want to comment on that before we move on?
I can briefly comment. I think from a human oversight, at least for us, we are make sure we have a diverse data set. So we're not relying on one data set, so multiple data sets. The other thing is we do a regular audit. And thirdly, we want to make sure there's always a human in the loop before we kind of finalize. I think those are the kind of key things we try to address.
Good advice. All right, so we're going to move into like implementations, strategies, and lessons learned. So, the first topic or the first question I sent out to you all was, what is your definition of AI readiness? If you could give me a quick definition of maybe how when you may have achieved it, whether you have now or whether, what your goal is for the future. So
I can just kick off. Sorry. This is actually a project we just started working just a few months ago. I think AI readiness means different things to different people. So I'll give my definition or our definition of what. So for us, we are a public serving agency like many others, but they come to a website to get the data. So we want to make sure our website is AI ready, that when the LLM pull the data, they are pulling in accurate data. So we contracted with another company to see, are they providing accurate results? And what we found out was it was only 67% accurate, which was high, but not that high. And they give a rating of others somewhere at 30%, somewhere at 80%. So we found out that the way we tag the data on our website, there's two content. There's a static content and dynamic content. So we are starting focusing on that static content first. The data we are tagging doesn't meet some of those like schema.org standard. So that's one type of, so we have a data evaluator tool kind of looking at how it can be ready so that the LLMs pull the right data. The other AI readiness is data retrieval. The data we have on our resources like our OneDrive, our shared drive, our PowerPoint, our SharePoint, how can that data be exposed to MS365? Does it have PII data? Does it have BII data? That's one aspect of AI ready data. The third actor we are actually looking is data tagging. Do we tag the data to make sure that this is PII data, or this is internal only data, this is IRS data, or whatever data that is that cannot be pulled with this AI model, because they are very powerful. They can pull a lot of this information. So in a nutshell, quickly, those are like data AI readiness for us to make sure our data is ready for consumption by the user.
Great. So we're kind of running short on time here before the Q&A. So can someone tell me maybe what the biggest barrier they may have encountered, whether it was technical, cultural, organizational, moving forward?
I could try to start. I think those are all of the above. Touching, touching on readiness, right? You have to have your data has to be available. You have to bring in tools, right? And handle all the compliance of tools. You have to have staff already, right? So staff have some knowledge of how to start using the products. And you need governance and oversight. So this can all work. I think the major thing like I see is the way to address these barriers is to not try to solve them all at once. It's to build a process, right? And then just continue to refine it. I mostly think of it like a meta process where, you're tracking how effective your process is at introducing new potential use cases, and then monitoring those experiments and figuring out which ones you want to grow and which ones you want to terminate those trials. Almost like planting a bunch of seeds, right? You need a fertile place to plant them. You want to encourage people to explore the technology and plant a lot of seeds, and then you need the tooling to look down and say like, hey, these are going to grow into the right tomatoes, or these are going to grow into the right cucumbers, and these plants aren't doing too well, so we're going to cull them. Having that in place, and just meeting, just enough policy to address those things, and really helping the users along that pathway so people can explore. But there's got to be a pathway to production. And that's, I think, the biggest barrier that many organizations face is getting experimentation to production.
Perfect. Anyone want to add to that before we go into some of the closing remarks? All right. I think the word of the day is data. Anyone going to argue with that? But anyway, so what I'd like to do is kind of take a round robin on closing reflections, and think about what advice you would offer to agencies looking to use AI to transform citizen services. And if you had to identify one high impact AI use case that could potentially transform services that agencies deliver to the government in the next 3 years, what might that be? And anyone want to take the first go at it? All right, I'm putting on my 5th grade teacher
I was going
hat.
to say, I can go ahead and go, Janet. Yeah, really good questions to close out. I would say advice, offering agencies, my best advice would be to engage your workforce. Like I said, a lot of things that we're doing are born out of the things that we need as folks doing the work to be more efficient in our work. And I would say when you do that, you get excitement from the people who are then going to be adopting AI. If they're the ones who kind of had a hand in saying, hey, I wonder if this technology could make this process easier. Hey, I wonder if I could, take more phone calls in a day because of XYZ. And, employee efficiency is always going to result in improved service to the public, which at the end of the day is what we're all trying to do in our government services. So I think engaging your workforce is a big one. And then in terms of a high impact use case, I mentioned at the beginning where at SSA, we're dealing with a lot of applications for benefits, a lot of claims. So I think it would be a pretty big game changer for AI to be able to identify those claims or those cases where quick decisions could be made, and then get those to the people who could, then look at them and reduce processing time and, get people their benefits quicker. It also would help with resource allocation and having folks, who need to look at the more difficult claims, the ones who need a little bit more nuance, looking at those, and then other ones can be processed quicker. So I think AI is going to play a huge role in any government agency who has claims and cases and benefits processing and backlogs in helping us reduce that time and improve our accuracy.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I can go next.
Sure.
I'll keep it short. I think these AI tools are good gadgets, but we should need to focus on what bring precision and reach of what our mission is. Precision is from the data accuracy, the results, and then reach is like I meant about that they're using our data, how they can use our data better. I think that's the focus. And I think other thing to forget is that the expertise of our people remain the same. We need people oversight. They're not going to take over our work. We still need oversight. That is very key. And in the future, I think the big benefit of this is as we're getting more, with the workforce being streamlined and stuff, we can be more interactive. The government we can provide websites that are more interactive rather than one-way website. You go and collect the information. So we're looking at something called MCP server where we can start interacting and they can pull our data themselves rather than we providing them data. They're reaching out to us. So I think more interactive, that will be, I think, a big future looking ahead for the government services. Thank you.
Brian or Nat, you want to go?
I'll try real quick. I think the main thing is just, I think everybody's focused on actual pain points, right? For AI adoption is key. I think about like a high impact use case. If you're an agency and you're getting hundreds of questions about something, right? They probably don't have access to the information they need, right? So, first of all, you can help use AI to help identify, hey, there's trends in the questions. But I think a lot of this might be just helping people and guiding them to the right resources at the right time. So it's not replacing or giving the answer, it's helping them get to the right place. Will really help improve service delivery.
I love that. Nat, you want to take us out with a closing reflection?
Yeah, I'll just kind of tag on what Ryan said, because I think he said that very well. We look at people, process, technology. Whenever we build any type of AI solution or any type of system, those three attributes are key to any system or any type of concept being adopted by some type of society or organization. What I will say is, in terms of the government and the government really kind of adopting AI, we see AI as being a very circular, continuous approach, right? Where it's always going to be evolving into different spaces, different types of use cases. So it's important for us to understand what the success or KPIs look like for success and failure, so we can evolve in every iteration of the circular process. But I think for the government in particular, acquisition aspects of AI, also with certification aspects of AI, trying to evolve those things and improve those things over time will get us in a much more effective and what I think a crucial pathway to be competitive with some of our adversaries and just, other countries around the globe. So.
Thank you. So just as we wrap up, first of all, I really want to thank all of my panelists here and everyone at ACT-IAC who helped us put this conversation together. One of the key takeaways is AI is no longer just a future capability. It's no longer just vacuuming your floors in the iRobot. It's here, and it's helping your organizations deliver faster, smarter, and more responsive services. And it's only going to get better as we move and mature in this space. I think one of the key takeaways here is data. We heard that probably in every response, but it's also not to try to do everything at once. Start where it matters the most, which was what Ryan brought up just a few seconds ago, and prioritize the moments in your customer journey where better insights, speed, or personalization might have the best impact, where you can give the citizens the best path to the answer. And then I think, as Patsy alluded to, use it to, augment the teams as you move forward with transparency and always responsibility and trust. So again, I want to thank every single one of you for sharing your perspectives, to everyone who's on the call today. And that's going to conclude our sessions, but we will have allotted 30 minutes for Q&A. Param, I know you said you got to leave here real quickly, but if the other folks want to stay around and see if we've got any questions, that would be awesome.